You spent years dreaming about it. You watched every documentary, followed every build on YouTube, maybe even visited a community in New Mexico. You were sold on the idea of a home that heats itself, grows your food, catches its own rain, and costs almost nothing to run. Then you either built one, or you talked to someone who did, and the truth hit like a wall of cold tires. Earthships are failing people all over the world in 2026, and the people selling you the dream are very quiet about why. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what goes wrong, why it goes wrong, and the specific things the Earthship industry does not want you to Google before you sign up for a workshop or break ground on your land. And I promise you, if you are serious about sustainable living, you need to watch this all the way to the end, because the last section might be the most important thing anyone has ever told you about off-grid building. If you are new here, this channel is about honest conversations on sustainable living, building, and the gap between what influencers show you and what real life actually delivers. Subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a video like this one. The Earthship dream versus the 2026 reality. Let us start with what an Earthship actually is, because a lot of people are vague on this. The concept was developed by architect Michael Reynolds starting in the 1970s in Taos, New Mexico. The original idea was radical and genuinely exciting: build a home out of recycled tires rammed with earth, use the thermal mass of those tires to regulate interior temperature, face the home south with large glazing to capture solar gain, catch rainwater from the roof, treat gray water through interior planter beds, and generate electricity from solar panels. The home is supposed to be largely self-sufficient. You go off-grid, grow food in your greenhouse, and live lightly on the planet. That pitch has not changed much in 50 years. But the world has. Building science has advanced dramatically. Climate data has shifted. Thousands of Earthships have now been lived in for decades, and real performance data is available. And what that data shows is uncomfortable. The classic Earthship design, taught in workshops and featured in glossy books, consistently underperforms its promises in almost every climate outside a very specific slice of the American Southwest. That is not a fringe opinion. That is the finding of independent researchers, of former Earthship residents who have gone public with their experiences, and increasingly of local building departments that are rejecting Earthship permit applications outright. The thermal mass myth. Here is where the whole thing starts to fall apart structurally. The central thermal claim of an Earthship is that the tire walls, packed with rammed earth, store heat during the day and release it at night, keeping the interior temperature stable without mechanical heating or cooling. This is called thermal mass, and it is a real and valid principle in building science. The problem is that thermal mass alone does not insulate. These are two completely different things, and Earthship marketing consistently conflates them. In a dry, sunny desert climate with wide daily temperature swings, thermal mass can work beautifully. The sun heats the mass during the day, the mass radiates that heat back at night when temperatures drop, and the cycle repeats. But outside that specific climate, the system breaks down. In cloudy climates, there is not enough solar gain to charge the thermal mass to useful temperatures. In consistently cold climates like the UK, Canada, Northern Europe, or elevated parts of the American Rockies, the ground temperature is cold enough that the earth-burned walls actually pull heat out of the home rather than storing it. In humid subtropical climates like much of West Africa, Southeast Asia, and coastal regions, the system creates chronic moisture problems. By 2026, there is a growing body of documented case studies from Earthship builds in Scotland, Spain, France, Canada, and Australia where residents report spending winters that are dramatically colder than expected, with indoor temperatures regularly dropping into ranges that require supplemental heating. A tire wall does not pass the same thermal resistance test as a properly insulated modern wall. Thermal mass and insulation value, or R value, are not the same metric. The moisture and mold problem. This one is rarely discussed in Earthship promotion content, and it should be. The interior greenhouse concept, those planter beds running along the south-facing glass wall, sounds wonderful in theory. You grow food year-round, the plants contribute to humidity, and the whole system feels alive. In practice, managing moisture in an Earthship greenhouse is extremely difficult, and when it goes wrong, it goes badly wrong. The same south-facing glass wall that lets in solar gain also creates a condensation zone every time interior moisture hits the cold glass surface at night. In cooler or cloudier climates, this condensation is chronic and severe. It soaks into the wall surfaces, the planter beds, the tire walls, and the organic matter inside the greenhouse. Mold follows. And because tire walls are packed with earth rather than built from materials designed for moisture management, drying them out once they are wet is extremely slow and difficult. Homeowners who have gone through this experience describe discovering mold not just on visible surfaces but deep inside the structure. Remediation is expensive and disruptive. Some have had to gut sections of interior walls. The Earthship global network and affiliated workshop providers do not feature this in their promotional content. But if you search specifically for Earthship mold problems in forums populated by actual residents rather than builders trying to sell workshops, the reports are consistent and alarming. The building code and permit nightmare. Let us talk about something that stops a huge number of Earthship projects before they even begin. Tires. Specifically, used automotive tires rammed with earth as a structural building material. In most jurisdictions in the United States, Canada, the European Union, and Australia, building with tire walls in a structure intended for human habitation is either not permitted or requires an extraordinary amount of engineering documentation to get approved. As of 2026, the International Residential Code does not recognize rammed earth tires as an approved structural material. That means every ship built in a jurisdiction using the IRC requires a variance, a structural engineer willing to certify the design, and often a fight with the local building department that can take years and cost tens of thousands of dollars before a single tire is placed. Some counties in New Mexico, where the Earthship concept originated and where the local building department has decades of experience with the form, have created specific provisions. But if you are trying to build in most other places, you are starting a bureaucratic battle that most people are completely unprepared for. Earthship workshop marketing frequently downplays this. You are told the process is complicated but doable. What you are not told is that in many counties it is effectively impossible without a custom engineering package that costs more than the expected savings of the build. Beyond tires, the rainwater harvesting component runs into water rights law in several western states. In Colorado, for example, collecting rainwater from rooftops was illegal for decades and the rules around it remain complex. If your Earthship business model depends on being water self-sufficient and the law prohibits you from catching your own roof runoff, you have a foundational problem. The real cost versus the dream cost. Michael Reynolds made a career out of the idea that Earthships could be built cheaply using salvaged and recycled materials. Tires are free. Cans and bottles are free. Earth is free. The idea of building a home for almost nothing from waste materials is deeply appealing, and it drove the entire movement. Here is what the 2026 picture actually looks like for people attempting to build an Earthship. The tires are free. The labor required to ram each tire with earth is not. Properly compacted, each tire requires between 30 minutes and 2 hours of hard physical work. A typical Earthship exterior wall might use several hundred to over 1,000 tires. That labor, if you are hiring it, is a major cost. If you are doing it yourself, it is an extraordinary time cost that is rarely accounted for honestly in build estimates. The glazing on the south face, the large glass panels or specially designed window systems that allow solar gain into the greenhouse, are not cheap. Properly insulating those windows so they do not become the thermal weak point of the whole building requires high-performance glazing products that have significant market prices. The photovoltaic solar system, batteries, charge controllers, and inverters needed for off-grid electrical are not cheap. The rainwater catchment, filtration, and treatment system is not cheap. The gray water botanical cells, which treat wastewater through plant beds, require specific plant selection, maintenance, and periodic replacement. When honest Earthship builders tally their actual costs, finished Earthships often end up costing between $150 and $300 per square foot or more depending on location, which puts them directly in line with or above the cost of conventional construction in many markets. You are not getting a cheap house. You are getting a philosophically interesting house that is expensive, difficult to permit, and likely to underperform its energy claims in most climates. The resale and insurance trap. Here is a problem almost nobody talks about until they are trying to exit. What happens when you want to sell your Earthship? In most markets, Earthships are functionally unsaleable through conventional channels. Standard mortgage products require an appraisal, and appraisers need comparable sales data from similar properties. There are almost none. Lenders who finance conventional homes are reluctant to touch a tire-and earth structure with an unconventional floor plan, a greenhouse as a central living space, and systems that require owner expertise to maintain. Most buyers need financing to buy a home. If no lender will write a mortgage on the property, your buyer pool is limited to cash buyers with unconventional tastes, which is an extremely thin market. Homeowners insurance has similar issues. Standard underwriters are not set up to insure a home built from tires, cans, and bottles. Specialty insurance exists, but it is more expensive and harder to obtain. If you ever need to make a claim, you will discover that adjusters have no framework for valuing tire walls. This means that when you build an Earthship, you are making a decision that is difficult and potentially very costly to reverse. The dream does not come with an exit strategy. What actually works and where? None of this means sustainable, off-grid building is impossible or that the principles Reynolds pioneered are worthless. It means the execution has to be honest, location-specific, and informed by the 50 years of learning that has happened since the first tire was rammed in New Mexico. Passive solar design works. In the right climate, thermal mass works. Rainwater harvesting works where it is legal and precipitation is adequate. Greywater treatment through plant systems works at small scales. Solar and battery systems have improved dramatically in cost and performance. The problem is not the vision of self-sufficient housing. The problem is a specific design package being sold as a universal solution when it is actually a regional design optimized for one climate. If you are serious about building sustainably and self-sufficiently, the most honest advice available in 2026 is this: hire a building scientist, not a workshop provider. Get an energy model done for your specific site and climate before you choose a construction method. Look at what high-performance, low-energy building looks like in your region. Talk to people who actually live in unconventional homes year-round, not just the builders who sold them those homes. And be brutally honest about your budget, your timeline, your permit environment, and your long-term plans. The Earthship dream was born from a genuine desire to live differently and more lightly on the planet. That desire is worth honoring. The specific design it produced deserves honest scrutiny that the movement itself has been reluctant to apply. Closing. If this video saved you from a decision you would have regretted, or if it gave you a clearer picture before you break ground, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your questions in the comments. If you have lived in an Earthship and you have a story, whether it went well or badly, I want to hear it because real experience from real residents is how we build better information for everyone. Subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you in the next one.